Lies again, Crockett. Donald Trump's voice cuts through the room like a blade, sharp and merciless. Do you really think those 37 so-called witnesses will save you? 37 people watched every lie you've spun over the last 5 years, Jasmine. Every one of them recorded, every one of them waiting to be exposed. He leans forward, eyes narrowing, a smirk twisting his face. You claim to fight for justice, yet in this very room, you're outnumbered, outclassed, and outplayed. 2 decades of corruption, hundreds of secrets, and yet you dare to stand there with your righteous words? The cameras flash. The crowd gasps. Every microphone catches the tension, every word dripping with disdain. Jasmine Crockett takes a deep breath, her eyes locking onto Trump. But for the viewers watching, the stakes couldn't be higher. One wrong move, and everything she's built shatters. The chamber erupted with flashing cameras, reporters jostling for position, microphones pointed like spears ready to capture every word. Every click, every flash, every scribbled note amplified the tension, turning the room into a pressure cooker of anticipation. Jasmine stepped forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor, her gaze blazing with an intensity that seemed to set the very air on fire. Each step radiated purpose, each movement a declaration. She was not here to play, she was here to fight. Trump entered with his trademark smirk, the room shifting as if a storm had walked in. His eyes scanned Jasmine with a mix of amusement and condescension, his voice dripping sarcasm even before he spoke. Well, well, the mighty crusader finally shows up, he sneered, his tone cutting through the murmurs like a whip. I hope you brought more than speeches this time, Crockett. Jasmine didn't flinch. Her voice, sharp and controlled, cut through the tension like a blade. I brought the truth, she said, eyes never leaving his. And it's about to hit harder than you ever imagined. Trump chuckled, a low, dangerous sound. Truth? Funny. Your truth has been bending, twisting, and breaking under scrutiny for years. Are you really ready to stand here and pretend you can change anything? The room seemed to shrink around them. Every journalist leaned forward, pens poised, cameras rolling, capturing the unfolding storm. The tension was palpable, each syllable exchanged like a calculated strike in a duel. Jasmine fired back without hesitation, her words precise, cutting through the theatrics. Pretending? She shot back. You're the one hiding behind lies, manipulating every fact, and thinking the American people won't see through it. Trump's smirk turned into a snarl. Manipulating? Don't make me laugh. You're a puppet in your own little play, thinking justice is something you can brandish like a sword. I've seen heroes like you crumble before breakfast. Then maybe it's time you learned what real courage looks like? Jasmine snapped, her words resonating like gunfire across the chamber. Not for you, not for your allies, but for every person you've tried to silence. The reporters' pens flew faster, the flashes became more frenzied, and every eye in the room followed the two warriors locked in a verbal battlefield. Trump leaned forward, his hands slamming the podium for emphasis. Silence? Ha ha, you've got more mouth than sense. I'll make sure everyone here remembers who the real power is. Jasmine took a step closer, lowering her voice but letting each word carry the weight of conviction. Power without justice is meaningless, and the world is watching, Donald. They're not blind. Every misstep, every lie, every corner you've tried to hide in, they'll see it now. He laughed, a harsh, grating sound, but the tension didn't ease. It thickened, charged with electricity, as if the air itself could ignite. Jasmine's determination radiated like heat off a forge. Trump's defiance loomed like a shadow over the chamber. Words became weapons, and neither side relented. The verbal clash escalated into a symphony of sharp retorts and barbed jabs. Trump's voice rose, mocking, deriding, challenging. Jasmine's responses were precise, unyielding, slicing through his theatrics with undeniable force. Every insult, every accusation, every rhetorical strike pulled the audience deeper into the storm, leaving them breathless and hungry for the next moment. And just as the room reached a fever pitch, Jasmine paused, letting the weight of her presence settle. Cameras captured her calm defiance. Trump's irritation barely masked by his smirk. The battle lines were drawn, and everyone watching could feel it. The fight was only beginning. It was in that pause, subtle yet commanding, that the viewers realized the magnitude of what they were witnessing. A clash not just of personalities, but of ideals. Justice versus manipulation, courage against arrogance. The stage was set, and no one would look away. As the tension lingered, a quiet note resonated for those paying attention. If you want to follow every explosive moment, every twist of truth, and every daring move from Jasmine Crockett in her fight against overwhelming odds, make sure to subscribe to Harrison Stories, where justice, drama, and unflinching truth come alive. Jasmine Crockett's eyes never left Donald Trump as she straightened her posture, exuding calm control, even as her heart raced. The chamber's tension seemed almost tangible, as if every breath could ignite the room. From her leather-bound folder, she drew the first set of evidence, a meticulous collection of emails, memos, and documents that mapped a decade of manipulation. Every page a dagger poised to strike. "Let's begin with the facts," Jasmine announced, her voice sharp but steady. "These documents reveal a pattern of concealment, corruption, and deliberate misdirection. Every public claim you've made, every denial you've uttered, is contradicted here." Trump tilted his head, a smirk curling his lips. "Ah, yes, papers. Cute little papers," he mocked. "Do you honestly think a few typed words can topple decades of influence? I've seen kindergartners present more compelling arguments." The room stiffened. Pens hovered over notebooks. Microphones leaned closer. Flashes clicked rapidly. Jasmine stepped forward slightly, her gaze locked on him. "Kindergartners?" she replied, her tone slicing through the tension. "You've built empires on lies, Donald, hiding behind theatrics while reality exposed itself in plain sight. Every memo, every email, these are your truths, stripped bare, and they contradict everything you say." Trump laughed, a sharp grating sound. "Stripped bare? You really think exposing paper can undo experience? You're an amateur waving documents at a seasoned player. Adorable, really." But Jasmine didn't blink. "Experience without integrity is nothing. You may have manipulated the public for years, but facts aren't swayed by charm, influence, or bluster." He leaned back, steepling his fingers with a predator's poise. "Integrity? Cute word, Crockett. You're playing at justice while I navigate realities you couldn't imagine. But go ahead, educate us with your naive righteousness." The verbal spare intensified, each word a weapon, each response a calculated counterstrike. Jasmine unveiled emails detailing internal manipulations of contracts, misappropriation of funds, and messages hinting at deliberate suppression of investigations. Her voice was calm, authoritative, letting the evidence carry the punch. "Words can be twisted, Donald, but paper doesn't lie. Evidence speaks louder than your theatrics, louder than your power plays." Trump's smile faltered for a moment, replaced by a flicker of irritation, before he regained control. "Evidence? There's always another story, Crockett. Context is everything. You think these documents tell the full tale? You haven't even scratched the surface of reality." Jasmine leaned forward, eyes blazing. "Reality is what you try to hide. And no matter how much you spin, manipulate, or charm, truth exists. Every witness, every shred of evidence, every fact aligns against you. You cannot escape it, not today, not ever." Reporters scribbled feverishly. Cameras captured every glance, every nuance of this intellectual battlefield. Trump fired back with jabs, ridicule, and sarcastic laughter, attempting to destabilize Jasmine. But she countered each attack with precision, exposing gaps in his logic, using his words against him. "You underestimate the power of accountability," Jasmine said, her voice a quiet storm. "Courage isn't measured by comfort or influence. It's measured by standing firm in the storm, facing the storm head without flinching." Trump's laugh sharpened into a forced sneer. "Storm? Darling, you're wading into a hurricane with a paper fan. But by all means, continue your display of naive heroism. It's entertaining." Jasmine's gaze swept across the chamber, calm but deadly, letting the weight of the evidence and her conviction hang in the air. Each document she placed was a nail in a coffin of deception. Each carefully chosen word a precise strike. The intellectual duel wasn't about volume. It was strategy, wit, and unyielding resolve. The chamber was electrified. Every observer, every journalist, every camera lens recorded this battle of intellect and principle. The stakes had escalated beyond personal rivalry. This was a public reckoning. Every taunt, every rebuttal, every strategic pause drew the audience deeper into the story, leaving them breathless, craving the next exchange. Trump's confidence wavered, subtle but noticeable, as the room absorbed Jasmine's calculated precision. He attempted to regain control with theatrics, but the evidence was relentless, the logic unassailable. The tension in the room was a taut wire, ready to snap at the slightest provocation. This was more than a debate. It was a war of wits, a collision of ideals. Integrity versus cunning, courage versus manipulation, truth versus deception. And in that charged silence between exchanges, it was clear. The battle had just begun, but the battlefield was firmly in Jasmine Crockett's hands. Jasmine took a measured breath, then turned to the monitors surrounding the chamber. The first video clip played, grainy at first, then crystal clear, a recording of internal meetings, candid conversations, and evidence of manipulation so blatant it made the air in the room feel heavier. Faces frozen in shock, the press scribbled furiously, cameras capturing every second. The room seemed to shrink, each frame of video a hammer striking at the foundations of Trump's defenses. "This footage," Jasmine announced, her voice steady yet cutting through the tension like a scalpel, "shows actions that cannot be explained away. Attempts to suppress investigations, mislead the public, and manipulate decision-making processes are all on record. This is the reality, and it is undeniable." Trump's face twisted in anger. His usual composure cracked. "This is ridiculous. Fake. All of it. This." He slammed his hand on the podium, a forceful attempt to drown the evidence in noise. "You think you can humiliate me in front of the nation with videos and paper? I built an empire. I survived worse than this." Jasmine held her ground, calm as a hurricane at its eye. She gestured to the next document, a series of signed affidavits from whistleblowers, each one corroborating the videos. "Donald, these are not opinions. These are sworn statements from people with first-hand knowledge. Every claim you've made publicly is contradicted here. Every denial is accounted for, and the American people deserve to see the truth." The chamber erupted with murmurs. Flashbulbs exploded like fireworks. Trump's voice grew louder, harsher, as he attempted to create chaos, shouting over the evidence, trying to drown it with sheer volume. "Fake news! This is a setup! I won't stand here and—" But Jasmine's gaze never wavered. Each word she spoke was deliberate, precise, pulling the audience deeper into the web of facts. You can shout, you can rage, you can attempt to disrupt, but nothing, no tantrum, no smirk, no lie, can erase what's on record. Every timestamp, every signature, every witness aligns with reality, Donald. A witness was called next, stepping forward with trembling hands but firm conviction. Her testimony laid bare decisions, manipulations, and attempts to obstruct justice. The room fell silent as her words filled the air, punctuated by Jasmine's interjections that framed the evidence into an undeniable narrative. "Listen closely," Jasmine said, her voice resonant and calm. "This is not conjecture. This is fact. These people risked everything to bring the truth forward, and it stands before you now." Trump's smirk faltered entirely, replaced by a snarl of frustration. "Risked everything? They are liars, weak people trying to steal attention from real achievements. You're pathetic, Crockett." Jasmine didn't flinch. She let the witness finish, then summarized the mounting evidence with surgical clarity. "Every document, every recording, every sworn statement tells the same story. This is not personal. This is justice. And the public is watching, seeing the patterns of deception laid bare." The press leaned forward, breathless. Social media feeds erupted as live footage streamed the testimonies and documents, each detail analyzed by millions. Jasmine's calm authority contrasted sharply with Trump's escalating fury, drawing the public's attention sympathy, and belief toward her. Trump attempted one final gambit, mocking gestures, sarcastic commentary, a barrage of interruptions aimed at intimidating witnesses. But Jasmine anticipated each move. Her responses were swift, logical, and piercing. Interruptions won't change reality, smirks won't erase evidence, and yelling won't stop the truth from reaching those who demand it. The tension became almost unbearable. Every click of a pen, every shuffle of papers, every whispered question from reporters was magnified by the charged atmosphere. Jasmine's eyes scanned the room, ensuring every detail landed, every nuance communicated. Trump's frustration became increasingly visible, a storm raging against a wall of unwavering resolve. As the final video concluded, showing internal memos that explicitly contradicted Trump's public statements, the chamber seemed to hold its collective breath. Trump's voice cracked in anger. This is impossible. But Jasmine cut through the chaos with calm finality. Impossible is what you made it, Donald. But truth, undeniable and relentless, doesn't bend to threats, tantrums, or attempts at intimidation. The American people will see, and history will remember. For a heartbeat, the room hung on that declaration. The clash of personalities, of intellect, and of ideals had reached a fever pitch. The air was electric, taut like a tightened string ready to snap. Every viewer, every journalist, every person watching felt the weight of the confrontation, the high-stakes drama unfolding with unrelenting intensity. It was in that suspended moment that the first wave of public understanding crystallized. The facts, the testimonies, and the evidence were impossible to ignore. Jasmine Crockett had not only presented the truth, she had orchestrated it into a sequence so undeniable, so compelling, that even Trump's theatrics could not distract from the reality. And yet, even as the chamber absorbed the shock of these revelations, it was clear that the battle was far from over. Every word, every document, every testimony was a prelude to the next confrontation, a harbinger of the escalating war between justice and deception. Trump's face darkened, a storm brewing behind his eyes. He slammed his hands onto the podium with a thundering crash that made the room jump. "You think you're clever, Crockett?" he barked, his voice booming across the chamber. "You're a pathetic little wannabe, a joke wrapped in a crusader's costume. You've got no experience, no brains, and the arrogance to think you can lecture me." Gasps echoed from the press benches. Cameras flashed rapidly, capturing every twitch of Trump's scowl, every sharp intake of breath from the audience. The chamber seemed to shrink under the weight of his fury. Jasmine Crockett's eyes narrowed, her jaw tightening, but she did not flinch. Calmly, she adjusted the stack of evidence before her, letting the weight of facts speak louder than anger. "Pathetic?" she shot back, voice clear and resonant. "Donald, the only thing pathetic here is your attempt to bully your way out of accountability. Every email, every memo, every sworn testimony you've tried to hide is now on record. You may yell, scream, and insult, but facts don't bow to tantrums." Trump's smirk twisted into a sneer. "Facts? You've got a pile of papers and a few videos, and you think you can take me down? I've survived scandals, bankruptcies, lies bigger than your little crusade, and you, little Crockett, you think you can intimidate me with your high and mighty lectures?" Jasmine leaned slightly forward, her presence commanding the room. "Intimidate? No. Expose? Yes. Every document I've presented dismantles the narrative you've spent years constructing. Every witness confirms the same story, and every lie you've told publicly is contradicted here. You can't charm your way out of the truth, Donald. You can't shout it away. You can't make it disappear." Trump's voice escalated, thick with venom. "Disappear? You'll be gone before anyone remembers your name. A nobody thinking she can take on the king." Jasmine's retort was precise, cutting through the room like a blade. "King? There are no crowns here, Donald. Just justice. And it doesn't bend for wealth, influence, or threats. Today, in front of the nation, the truth stands above your smirks, above your tantrums, and above your arrogance." The press leaned in, pens scratching furiously, cameras clicking in rapid succession. The public on live feed held their breath. This was no ordinary testimony. It was a battlefield of words, intellect, and principle, and every syllable was a weapon. Trump lunged verbally again, this time with raw profanity, hurling insults calculated to provoke and destabilize. "You're a liar, a freak, a—" He was interrupted by Jasmine's steady, icy gaze. "I am neither freak nor liar, Donald," she said, each word deliberate, measured, unyielding. "You are the liar. You are the one who built a career on deception and manipulation, and now your own actions are exposed for everyone to see. You can shout all you want, but the evidence does not lie. The truth does not flinch, and the public will not be fooled any longer." The chamber's air vibrated with tension, each exchange sharper than the last. Trump's face flushed crimson, his attempts at theatrics growing frantic. He waved his hands, slammed the table, tried to drown out Jasmine's voice with volume alone. But she remained a pillar of calm authority, guiding every narrative, connecting each piece of evidence, leading the public and witnesses alike into the undeniable truth of the matter. "You think anger can rewrite history?" Jasmine asked, her voice rising just enough to cut through his outbursts. "Every witness, every document, every video you've tried to bury has emerged. You are cornered, and yet you continue to thrash, blind to reality. Your words are noise. My evidence is the story." Trump growled, his face contorted with frustration. "Noise? You think your little evidence can shame me? I am untouchable. You—" "Untouchable," Jasmine interrupted sharply. "No one is untouchable. Not in the light of truth, not in front of the people who see through every lie. Today you are exposed, and every attempt to hide behind insults will fail." The chamber seemed to hold its collective breath. Every journalist, every witness, every camera operator knew they were witnessing a confrontation for the ages. The clash of ideology, morality, and sheer willpower reached a fever pitch. Jasmine's calm authority clashed beautifully against Trump's raw fury, creating a spectacle that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. As the exchange slowed, Jasmine allowed herself a brief pause, letting the room absorb the magnitude of her composure. Trump's rage had no effect against the airtight logic and damning evidence she presented. Every sneer, every shout, every curse he uttered was rendered meaningless by the meticulous, undeniable proof laid bare before the nation. And in that silence, the truth resonated louder than any insult. Jasmine Crockett had not only defended herself, she had struck directly at the heart of deception, proving that intellect, evidence, and courage could withstand even the most vicious onslaught. The audience, both in the chamber and across screens, leaned in, riveted. Every moment, every word, every exchange was a testament to the relentless pursuit of justice, and the understanding was clear. This confrontation was far from over, but Jasmine had already set the battlefield on fire. For those craving the full story, the twists, the betrayals, and the relentless clash of courage and cunning, Harrison's Stories brings every detail to life, capturing the drama, the intellect, and the explosive confrontations that define this historic showdown. Jasmine Crockett's fingers hovered over the next stack of documents, her eyes scanning the room with calm precision. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her presence commanded attention. "It's time the nation sees the full scope of actions you've taken, Donald," she began, voice steady but cold. "Every misstep, every concealed transaction, every attempt to manipulate the truth for personal gain, laid bare." The chamber went silent. Even the reporters seemed to hold their breath as Jasmine placed the first documents on the podium. The papers contained records of previous controversies, financial irregularities, and correspondence that contradicted Trump's public statements from years past. Each sheet was meticulously cataloged, time-stamped, and ready to confront him with the weight of undeniable proof. Trump's eyes widened, his usual smirk flickering as he leaned forward, attempting to mask the first hint of unease. "Oh, this again. You think dredging up old stories, half-truths, and media nonsense can scare me? I've dealt with scandals that make your evidence look like child's play," he spat, voice rising sharply. Jasmine didn't flinch. Her voice remained crisp, slicing through his bluster. "Half-truths? These are primary documents, Donald. Signed letters, internal emails, and sworn statements. Every detail corroborates the others. You may have skirted accountability for years, but today, the records speak louder than your rhetoric ever could. Trump slammed a hand on the podium, rattling papers and drawing startled gasps from the audience. Records, statements. You think they change history? You think people care about what I did 10, 20 years ago? You're pathetic, Crockett. A subtle smile touched Jasmine's lips, not one of triumph, but of inevitability. She laid down another set of documents, this time detailing tax records, questionable financial arrangements, and correspondence with advisors that suggested deliberate concealment of misconduct. Pathetic, she echoed, calm yet biting. Pathetic is hiding behind money and influence to avoid scrutiny. Pathetic is manipulating narratives while believing no one will ever challenge you. Pathetic is thinking you are above justice. Today, nothing protects you. Not wealth, not fame, not intimidation. Trump's face reddened, a mixture of rage and disbelief. Intimidation? You think you can intimidate me? I've faced investigations, attacks, lies. I've survived it all. And yet, Jasmine replied, leaning slightly forward, her gaze unwavering, every lie, every act of manipulation, every attempt to escape accountability has left a trail. And today, every trail points to the truth that no amount of yelling, cursing, or theatrics can erase. The tension in the chamber thickened, nearly tangible. Reporters scribbled feverishly, cameras clicked incessantly, and every person present felt the weight of the confrontation. Jasmine's revelation wasn't just about past scandals. It was a psychological hammer, exposing the gap between Trump's public bravado and private actions. Trump lunged verbally, his voice jagged and loud, as he hurled accusations and insults, attempting to regain control. You're a liar. You're twisting facts. You think dredging up the past makes you some kind of hero? People will laugh at you. Jasmine's voice rose just enough to cut through the chaos, steady and commanding. I am not twisting facts. The facts exist independently of our opinions. They reveal patterns, decisions, and behaviors that have consequences. And those consequences are visible now, to everyone in this room and to the millions watching. Her words resonated through the chamber. The audience, both live and streaming, leaned forward as each revelation landed like a hammer on a fragile facade. The contrast between Jasmine's composure and Trump's escalating fury became stark, painting him as a man cornered by his own past, struggling to maintain control while the truth advanced relentlessly. Jasmine introduced a witness next, a former associate willing to testify about previously concealed decisions and actions. Their voice shook at first but strengthened under Jasmine's guidance. Every word reinforced the documents she had laid out, forming an unbroken chain of accountability. Trump's face contorted in rage, his interruptions frantic but increasingly ineffective against the undeniable cohesion of facts and testimony. You think you can humiliate me with stories from years ago? Trump roared. I've built empires while I stand for justice, Jasmine interrupted, her voice unwavering, resonant with authority. While the truth cannot be buried by arrogance or wealth, every empire is temporary. Every lie eventually unravels. And today yours unravels in front of the world. The room went quiet, the press and witnesses absorbing the weight of her declaration. Trump's anger swelled, but it no longer commanded the narrative. Jasmine's calm, meticulous exposure of his past had shifted the momentum entirely. Every document, every testimony, every revealed secret compounded into a portrait of a man no longer in control, an archetypal villain confronted by unwavering courage and relentless justice. The tension crackled like static electricity, the psychological stakes peaking as Jasmine summarized her revelations. You cannot hide behind insults or theatrics. The past is exposed, the truth undeniable, and the public is watching. What you did in private, what you attempted to conceal, all stands revealed. And justice, real, unflinching justice, will not be silenced. Even as Trump's fury continued, the chamber and the audience had already absorbed the impact. The battle was far from over, but the psychological blow was decisive. Jasmine had laid bare his past misdeeds with precision, authority, and a calm that contrasted with his volatility, leaving him visibly shaken and the public riveted. Trump's eyes burned with restrained fury, a storm hidden beneath his composure. He leaned forward, voice low but venomous, attempting to impose a weight that pressed down on every person in the chamber. "You think your little crusade frightens me, Crockett?" he hissed. "You are nothing, do you understand? Nothing. And if anyone dares to challenge me, there will be consequences. You think the media will protect you? My allies? My reach?" He gestured sharply to the cameras, a deliberate move to remind everyone of his influence. His words were calculated, each phrase a psychological blade aimed at intimidation. The reporters felt it. The witnesses felt it. Even the air in the room seemed to tighten under the gravity of his threat. But Jasmine Crockett did not flinch. Her eyes met his, unwavering, a calm force that radiated authority and intellect. She leaned slightly forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "Threats do not impress me, Donald. Influence does not intimidate me, and theatrics do not distract me from the truth." Trump's smirk twisted into a glare, a predator sensing resistance. "Truth? You talk about truth as if it exists in isolation. The truth is what you make it, Crockett, and I am very good at making the world see what I want them to see." Jasmine's response was measured, precise, and merciless in its clarity. "You may attempt to manipulate perception, but reality is relentless. Evidence, facts, testimonies, these do not bend to your will. The truth stands regardless of how loudly you shout, how aggressively you gesture, or how many allies you summon." The room quivered with tension, every observer acutely aware of the psychological duel unfolding before them. Trump tried again, using every tool at his disposal: veiled threats, sharp insinuations, subtle gestures aimed to provoke fear. "I've faced tougher opponents than you, Crockett. You're walking a fine line, and one wrong step will cost you everything." Jasmine's eyes did not waver, her jaw set with unwavering determination. "I do not fear consequences, Donald. Fear is a tool for those who cannot face accountability. I stand here armed with truth, logic, and evidence, and every attempt to manipulate, intimidate, or control only reinforces the strength of what I represent." Trump's voice rose, the menace sharpened with every word. "You think bravery can protect you? You think intellect can shield you from what's coming? The world is not kind to those who defy me." Jasmine leaned closer, her tone calm but lethal, like the strike of a surgical instrument. "The world values courage and integrity, Donald. The world sees through manipulation, through bluster, through threats. Every effort to intimidate only exposes weakness, and today the public sees it all." Trump's gestures became more frantic, a mixture of rage and tactical maneuvering. He tried to rally his allies in the room, whispering commands, signaling subtle cues to shift attention and disrupt the narrative. He sought to dominate the psychological battlefield by sheer force of presence, but Jasmine countered each maneuver effortlessly. Her responses were not loud or flashy. They were precise, deliberate, and weighted with authority. Every word, every glance, every slight tilt of her head carried a psychological impact, disarming his theatrics and turning the tension back against him. "You rely on fear, on manipulation, on networks and influence," Jasmine continued, her voice calm, unwavering. "But the truth cannot be cornered, it cannot be twisted, and it cannot be silenced. And no display of anger or control can hide the patterns you've spent years constructing, nor erase the evidence now laid bare before everyone." Trump's composure finally began to fracture, tiny cracks appearing in his facade of invincibility. He gestured wildly, tried to interject to regain control, but Jasmine anticipated each move, each tactic, each attempt to dominate. She remained a pillar of strategic calm, letting the weight of her presence, her words, and her evidence do the work. The psychological battle reached a fever pitch. Every look exchanged, every carefully measured phrase, every subtle inflection became a weapon. Jasmine's calm intellect systematically dismantled Trump's attempts at intimidation. The audience, both in the chamber and across millions of screens, felt the tension as if it were physical, a taut wire stretched to its limit, vibrating with intensity. And then Jasmine delivered the subtle yet devastating coup, a single line that cut through all the posturing. You may try to control perception, Donald, but perception does not define reality. Your attempts at intimidation reveal more about you than anything I could ever say. The public sees your fear disguised as fury, your insecurity disguised as aggression, and today that is the most revealing evidence of all. The chamber fell into a heavy, stunned silence. Trump's fury was palpable, but his psychological tactics had been turned inward, reflecting his own instability. Jasmine's calm mastery of intellect and strategy had not only deflected his attacks but had used them to amplify her own authority, proving that courage and reason could withstand even the most aggressive psychological onslaught. Every observer understood. This was not merely a courtroom or a chamber. It was a battlefield of minds, wills, and strategies. And Jasmine Crockett had not only survived the storm, she had turned it into her weapon. Yet as the day progressed, the stakes expanded beyond the chamber walls. Senators whispered in huddles, their faces etched with concern, ambition, and calculation. Political alliances shifted subtly, whispers of strategy weaving through the air. Every word Jasmine had spoken, every piece of evidence she presented, was now under scrutiny, not just from the public, but from the machinery of power itself. Trump seized the moment, leaning into his network of loyal allies. His supporters, both within the chamber and in the wider political arena, amplified his narrative, seeking to frame Jasmine's revelations as partisan theatrics rather than accountability. Television broadcasts dissected every gesture, every glance, creating a swirling storm of interpretation, speculation, and outrage. Headlines flashed on screens. Crockett attacks Trump. Is it justice or politics? President defends record, claims partisan witch hunt. Despite the growing tidal wave of political pressure, Jasmine stood unwavering. Her calm demeanor was a sharp contrast to the swirling chaos around her. She understood the battlefield had grown, but she refused to let the external clamor distract from the truth she wielded. Every phrase, every presentation of evidence was calculated to maintain clarity and impact, even as lobbyists, partisan commentators, and public opinion sought to muddy the waters. Trump's voice carried across the chamber, projecting both defiance and desperation. You think you can sway the nation with your theatrics, Crockett? These senators, these media outlets, they know what's at stake. You're playing with fire, and fire can consume even the bravest. Jasmine's eyes narrowed, unwavering. Donald, no amount of allies, no amount of public manipulation, no chorus of false narratives can erase what has been presented. Facts do not bend to influence. Justice does not bow to power. And truth is resilient. The room seemed to hold its breath as she spoke. Every glance she cast, every subtle shift of posture, reinforced her command over the narrative. Senators on both sides leaned forward, realizing that her composure and meticulous presentation of evidence were not just procedural, they were strategic, almost surgical. Trump's attempts to rally support intensified. Tweets were preemptively issued, press conferences called, and loyal commentators paraded across networks to discredit Jasmine's credibility. Yet the more he tried to dominate the external narrative, the more the public sensed the weight of the evidence she had already presented. Millions watched in real time, absorbing contradictions, cross-referencing testimonies, and forming their own judgments. The chamber became a crucible of political and social tension. Allies of Trump whispered reassurances, plotted motions to shift focus, and even tried procedural interruptions to stall Jasmine's presentations. But each move she anticipated with precision, countering with clarity that left both audience and colleagues in awe. You're trying to build a shield of politics, Jasmine said calmly, turning her gaze on the murmuring senators. But shields cannot obscure the evidence. Shields cannot alter the truth. Every whisper, every spin, every attempt to rewrite history only highlights the gravity of what has been exposed today. The public pressure intensified further. Social media feeds exploded with clips of the hearing, each moment dissected and analyzed, creating waves of opinion that transcended political affiliations. Ordinary citizens debated the evidence, rallied behind Jasmine's courage, or attempted to defend Trump. But no one could ignore the clarity and precision of the narrative she was constructing. Trump, sensing the tide shifting beyond the chamber, grew visibly frustrated. His normally confident posture faltered under the combined weight of public scrutiny and Jasmine's unwavering precision. "This is outrageous. You think you can manipulate perception? You think the public will simply swallow this?" he barked, slamming a hand on the table for emphasis. Jasmine's response was measured, yet laced with undeniable authority. "Manipulation is your tool, Donald. Exposure is mine. I am not here to sway perception. I am here to present facts, evidence, and witness testimony. The public does not need me to shape their view. They only need the truth, and it is before them now." A tense silence fell over the chamber. The clash was no longer personal. It had become a confrontation between the entrenched powers of political influence and the unwavering force of justice. Every observer felt the weight of the moment, the strategies, the alliances, the public's gaze, all pressing against the fragile tension that hung in the air. In that charged atmosphere, Jasmine Crockett's composure became a beacon. Every movement, every word, every calculated pause communicated control, strategy, and the unshakable commitment to exposing truth. Even as political pressure surged and the public debate raged, she remained the pivot around which the hearing's moral and intellectual gravity revolved. By the end of the day, it was unmistakably clear. The confrontation had transcended personalities. What had begun as a direct battle of confrontation had evolved into a national struggle between justice and entrenched power. And in this crucible, Jasmine Crockett had proven she could withstand the storm, wielding truth and intellect as weapons far sharper than the cries, spins, and alliances arrayed against her. The public watched, riveted, as a new understanding dawned. This was more than a hearing. It was a battlefield where every decision, every argument, and every act of courage would resonate far beyond the chamber, shaping the perception of justice for generations to come. Jasmine Crockett took a deep breath, her fingers brushing over the next set of documents. The air in the chamber felt electric, charged with anticipation. "What I am about to present," she began, voice steady, resonant, "is evidence that directly implicates Donald Trump in actions that contradict his sworn statements, his public claims, and his denials." A hush fell over the room. Cameras zoomed in, reporters paused their typing mid-sentence, and even seasoned senators leaned forward, sensing the gravity of what was coming. Jasmine held the room with her gaze, every eye fixed, every breath measured, every heartbeat syncing with the intensity of the moment. She placed the first document carefully on the podium, a thick file of communications, emails, and authenticated records. "These documents," she continued, "reveal a coordinated effort to manipulate outcomes for personal and political gain, contradicting every public statement made in the past 5 years. Every step, every directive, every decision is documented here." Trump's eyes narrowed, a flicker of panic passing across his usual mask of confidence. "These are lies, fabrications. You think presenting a few emails can destroy me?" he barked, his voice rising, tremors of frustration lacing every word. Jasmine's lips curled in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "Not a few emails, Donald. Documented, cross-referenced, corroborated by multiple witnesses. This is not opinion, conjecture, or partisan commentary. This is fact, undeniable and unalterable. And the public sees it." The chamber erupted into murmurs. Reporters whispered among themselves. Some cameras caught a senator exchanging a startled glance with a colleague. Trump tried to interject, slamming a hand on the podium, his voice louder, sharper, more desperate. "You think this will matter? People don't care about documents. They care about charisma, about appearances. You are delusional, Crockett?" Jasmine's response was cold and deliberate. "Appearances can be deceiving. Charisma can be fabricated. But facts, evidence, and truth, these are immutable. Every attempt to deny, distract, or deflect now falls flat. Every word you speak in anger confirms the patterns we have exposed." Trump's usual bravado began to crack, the veneer of control slipping. His gestures became jerky, his interruptions increasingly frantic. "You are lying. This is manipulated. I've done nothing wrong. The public will see this for what it is." But the public already was seeing. Across the nation, millions watched live as Jasmine laid out the evidence piece by piece. Each revelation connected seamlessly to the next, forming an unbreakable chain. Emails from advisors, internal memos, witness statements, all converging to expose a pattern of deliberate deception. "Do you see it, Donald?" Jasmine pressed, voice calm but piercing. "Do you see that every effort to obscure the truth, to manipulate perception, has failed? Every document, every testimony, every corroborating witness strips away the illusion you have maintained. And now even the strongest allies cannot shield you from the weight of this evidence." Trump slammed both hands onto the podium, leaning forward red-faced, shouting over her, "You think you can destroy me with words and papers? You are weak. You are nothing. The system protects me, and the people know the truth." Jasmine tilted her head slightly, a faint glimmer of controlled intensity in her eyes. "The system serves justice, not deception. And today the truth is visible to everyone. You may shout, you may threaten, you may summon allies, but none of it erases the facts. Every attempt to dominate or manipulate is itself exposed, revealing more than I ever needed to say." A witness was called next, stepping forward with hands slightly trembling but eyes filled with resolve. Their testimony reinforced Jasmine's documentation, detailing interactions and decisions that Trump had previously denied. Each word landed like a hammer, each sentence tightening the public gaze on the president's contradictions. Trump's face twisted in frustration, his voice strained. "This is ridiculous. You cannot deny reality, Donald," Jasmine interrupted, her voice firm, cutting through the chaos. "And the public is witnessing it all. Every act of deception, every effort to mislead, every attempt to intimidate, exposed. Your denials have no refuge here." The chamber was electric, tension palpable. The psychological pressure, the undeniable evidence, and the strategic precision of Jasmine's delivery combined to create a scene of almost unbearable intensity. Every observer, from the journalists documenting the events to the senators silently weighing their responses, felt the momentum shift. By the time Jasmine concluded her presentation, the impact was undeniable. The second set of evidence had struck like a thunderbolt, direct, precise, and devastating. Trump's anger was evident, but his attempts at countering were faltering under the weight of both facts and public scrutiny. In that moment, the chamber and millions of viewers nationwide understood. This was the apex of confrontation. Every strategy, every tactic, every prior maneuver culminated here. Jasmine Crockett had delivered a blow so precise that it reshaped the battlefield entirely, leaving Trump exposed and the public captivated, unable to look away. The tension hung like a live wire, every eye and ear locked onto the unfolding drama, knowing that the story of justice, courage, and revelation was only accelerating toward its climax. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward slightly, her fingers lightly tapping the edge of the podium. Eyes locked on Donald Trump with an intensity that could slice through steel. "Let's revisit your statements from last year," she began, her voice calm but edged with precision. "You claimed under oath that no attempts were made to influence outcomes through back channels. Is that correct?" Trump's jaw tightened, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his usually unshakable facade. That's correct. I have never." "You've never," Jasmine interjected, raising a finger to punctuate the question. "Then explain this email," she said, sliding a document across the table toward him. "Sent directly from one of your associates coordinating actions to influence outcomes favorably for your interests. Signed, time-stamped, and verified. Care to clarify?" The room froze. Reporters leaned forward, cameras capturing every micro-expression, every twitch of the president's face. Trump's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the document, flipping through it with forced confidence. That is misleading. Context matters. The email doesn't tell the full story." Jasmine's eyes narrowed, piercing through his deflection. "Context," she repeated, voice steady but slicing. "Donald, the context is clear. The sender, the recipients, the content, and the timing, all aligned with actions you publicly denied. The public does not need you to define context. They have the facts in front of them. Trump's composure began to falter. His voice rose, an uneven mixture of anger and desperation. You think throwing documents at me will destroy my credibility? People know the truth. People know. They know the evidence, Jasmine interrupted, leaning slightly closer, her gaze unwavering. And evidence outweighs claims, opinion, and theatrics. Every attempt to manipulate or intimidate is laid bare. Every inconsistency you attempt to hide only strengthens the case against you. The chamber crackled with energy, the audience sensing the magnitude of the confrontation. Senators shifted in their seats, reporters typed furiously, and the viewers watching from homes nationwide could almost feel the tension pressing down like the weight of the entire nation on that room. Trump's hands gripped the podium as he attempted to regain footing. This is political theater. You are a puppet of the media, of special interests. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Jasmine countered, voice unwavering, cutting through his interruption. I understand that you believe power can shield you from accountability. I understand that you think intimidation can silence truth. And I understand that the American public deserves better than manipulation and deceit. Every statement, every document, every witness corroborates what has been concealed, and your attempts to evade it only make the truth clearer. Trump's usual bravado shattered further, his eyes darting, searching for a way to reclaim control, but finding no opening. Every strategic pause, every calculated question Jasmine posed struck like a precise blow, exploiting weaknesses, exposing contradictions, and leaving him cornered. You are reckless, Crockett, he spat, voice quivering, and you underestimate the power I still hold. Jasmine's smile was almost imperceptible, cold but deliberate. I do not underestimate you, Donald. I measure you. Every word, every gesture, every documented action has been weighed. And today in this chamber, your power is exposed not by theatrics or rhetoric, but by undeniable truth. The room's atmosphere intensified further. Every question Jasmine asked, every response Trump gave, felt like a chess move with lethal precision. She leveraged micro-expressions, hesitations, and inconsistencies, threading them into her narrative with devastating effect. Each verbal exchange, each calculated pause, each subtle gesture was a psychological strike, relentless, precise, and unavoidable. Trump's attempts to regain dominance grew more erratic. He shouted over Jasmine, tried to cut her off, flailed at procedural interruptions, but she anticipated every move, neutralized every tactic, and maintained a serene, commanding presence that made his chaos seem almost childish. You cannot evade accountability, Jasmine said softly but firmly, leaning into the weight of her words. Every lie, every omission, every manipulation is on record. Every effort to redirect the narrative only amplifies the truth. And today, the chamber, the nation, and history itself are witnesses to the reckoning you cannot escape. The clash reached its zenith. The air felt electric, almost suffocating, as if the chamber itself held its breath. Every observer could sense the stakes, the very integrity of truth and justice pressed against the walls, embodied in this confrontation. The duel was no longer just verbal, it was existential, a life-or-death struggle of intellect, strategy, and moral authority. Jasmine's calm, relentless questioning continued, each inquiry a scalpel, each insight a precision strike. Trump's defenses faltered under the relentless assault of truth, public scrutiny, and Jasmine's unyielding mastery of the narrative. And as the final question landed, the room erupted, not in applause, but in stunned, palpable tension. The culmination of a battle that had reached the edge of its razor-sharp climax. The stakes had never been higher. The confrontation was not merely about past misdeeds. It was about the very survival of integrity in the face of overwhelming deception. And in that chamber, the life-or-death mind game had only one player clearly in command. Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine reached for the final piece of evidence, a thick dossier that had been sealed until this pivotal moment. The weight of its contents seemed to electrify the room, every eye fixed on her as she slowly opened it, deliberately revealing the meticulously compiled documents, recordings, and corroborating testimonies. Today, Jasmine said, her voice steady but carrying an undeniable force, I present evidence that will leave no room for misinterpretation, no space for denial, and no refuge for deception. Trump's smirk faltered. His hand, previously steady, trembled slightly as he gestured in protest. You can't. This is impossible. This is fabricated. You are out of control, Crockett. Jasmine's eyes locked on his, unyielding. Impossible, she repeated, letting the word linger in the charged silence. Donald, the documents, the witness statements, and the recordings speak for themselves. The truth is not subject to opinion, nor to theatrics, nor to threats. The chamber seemed to shrink under the weight of anticipation. Senators leaned forward, reporters froze mid-sentence, and millions of viewers watching live across the nation felt the tension as if it were a physical force pressing down on them. Every hand movement, every glance, every breath counted. She laid out the documents with precision, each one more damning than the last. Emails with incriminating directives, financial records tying decisions to personal gain, witness testimonies that corroborated the narrative of manipulation, deceit, and deliberate obstruction. Every piece interlocked seamlessly, forming a chain that was impossible to break. Trump's attempts at interruption grew frantic. He shouted over her, slammed his hands on the podium, and gestured wildly, trying to rally support from loyal allies. You think a few papers can destroy me? The system protects me. The people know me. Jasmine did not flinch. Her calm, unwavering gaze swept the room, anchoring her authority. The system serves the truth, not deception. The people do not merely know you, Donald. They see the evidence of your actions. And actions, not claims, define responsibility. The tension reached a fever pitch. Every syllable Jasmine spoke landed like a hammer strike. She paused momentarily, letting the silence amplify the weight of what she had revealed. Every journalist, senator, and viewer knew this was the turning point. The final act had begun. Trump's face betrayed his frustration, a mix of panic and fury crossing his features. He attempted to discredit the evidence, citing technicalities, context, or alleged manipulations. But every point he raised was deftly countered by Jasmine's meticulous preparation. The public could see it unfolding. A man cornered, grasping at illusions of control, while Jasmine wielded the truth like a weapon of undeniable precision. You have had every opportunity to be transparent, to act with integrity, Jasmine declared, her voice ringing through the chamber, steady and unrelenting. Instead, you chose deception, manipulation, and obstruction. Today, those choices are exposed. The evidence does not lie, and the public witnesses every revelation. A hush settled over the room. Even Trump's allies paused, recognizing the magnitude of the moment. Cameras captured the shift, the smirk gone, the bravado faltering, replaced by a rare display of vulnerability. Jasmine's presence dominated the space, a mixture of intellect, courage, and relentless determination radiating with every word. The reactions outside the chamber were immediate and explosive. Social media feeds erupted with clips of Jasmine's presentation, hashtags trending within minutes, public commentary pouring in by the thousands. Opinion columns dissected the documents, analysts debated implications, and citizens across the country felt the intensity of history unfolding before their eyes. Trump's voice rose again, louder and sharper, but increasingly hollow. This is not fair. You cannot evade accountability, Jasmine interrupted, her tone calm yet final. Every attempt to obscure the truth, every effort to intimidate, every act of denial, undone, and now the truth is undeniable, visible to everyone, in plain sight. The chamber erupted in murmurs, a mix of awe, shock, and tension. Jasmine's declaration had not merely revealed facts, it had reshaped the battlefield, shifted momentum entirely, and delivered a psychological blow that even Trump's most loyal allies could not ignore. As she concluded, her final words hung in the air, resonant and unassailable. Justice is not dictated by power or position. Justice is defined by truth, courage, and accountability. Today, those who hide behind deception are exposed, and those who stand for integrity, like every citizen watching now, have their courage vindicated. For the first time, Trump seemed visibly shaken, his control slipping through fingers clenched so tightly they nearly trembled. The chamber, previously a theater of confrontation, had transformed into a crucible of revelation. And in that crucible, Jasmine Crockett had emerged as the undeniable force of justice, intellect, and moral authority. The turning point had arrived. The evidence had exploded. The public had reacted, and the narrative had shifted irreversibly. And as the chamber absorbed the weight of this historic moment, it was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. The final hours of the hearing unfolded like a tightly wound string ready to snap. Senators and committee members exchanged solemn glances, aware that their judgments and votes would be forever recorded in history. Cameras captured every twitch, every expression, every micro-movement, broadcasting the intensity to millions of viewers nationwide. Trump sat behind his podium, his face a mixture of fury, disbelief, and exhaustion. The usual arrogance, the calculated bravado that had defined him, was replaced by tension etched deep into every line of his face. He attempted to speak, his voice a sharp bark, but found himself repeatedly interrupted by committee members referencing Jasmine's meticulously compiled evidence. Jasmine Crockett, in contrast, remained the picture of unshakable composure. Every gesture measured, every glance deliberate, every word resonant. The calm authority she exuded carried the weight of truth itself. She did not need to shout. She did not need to plead. The documents, recordings, and witness testimonies she had presented were her weapon, her voice amplified by evidence and reason. "You have had the opportunity to respond," Jasmine said, her voice clear, unwavering. "You have had the chance to clarify, to deny, to explain. And yet, despite your efforts, the facts remain unchallenged. Accountability does not depend on fear, power, or position. It depends on truth. And truth, Mr. Trump, stands before you now." Trump's lips pressed into a thin line. He opened his mouth, then closed it, caught in the corner of logic, law, and public scrutiny. Every attempt at deflection, every fragment of denial, was countered by Jasmine's unwavering focus. The room seemed suspended in time, a collective holding of breath as the final arguments settled in the air like charged particles. Committee members reviewed the documents one last time. Witnesses' statements echoed in their minds. The emails, recordings, and evidence presented were undeniable. The weight of justice pressed down like a physical force, palpable even to those observing through screens from miles away. Trump finally rose to address the chamber, voice trembling with anger and frustration. "This is ridiculous. You cannot redefine truth with anger, Mr. Trump," Jasmine interrupted, her tone calm but lethal. "Your attempts to intimidate, to manipulate, to obscure, the public has seen through them. The facts are irrefutable. The evidence stands. And today, justice does not bend to fear. It commands respect." The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every word resonated not only through the chamber, but into living rooms across the nation. Millions were witnessing history, seeing a confrontation between raw power and methodical, courageous integrity play out in real time. As the hearing reached its conclusion, the chair of the committee called for a final review. The votes, the statements, and the official record were laid bare. The decision was as inevitable as it was historic. Jasmine Crockett had not only presented her case with precision, but had also won the moral and intellectual high ground. Trump sat down heavily, the fight in him still burning, but the momentum had shifted irreversibly. The room's atmosphere was a mixture of residual tension and a quiet, almost reverent satisfaction. Jasmine's victory was not one of theatrics or loud proclamations. It was a triumph of intellect, preparation, and unwavering dedication to justice. She straightened, eyes scanning the room, a quiet satisfaction in her posture. This hearing was never about spectacle. It was about truth, accountability, and the responsibility each of us carries. History will remember this day not for conflict, but for the courage to confront wrongdoing with evidence, reason, and integrity. Reporters whispered into microphones, capturing every nuance of her final remarks. Senators nodded subtly, some in awe of the display of methodical courage and precise argumentation. Trump's aides muttered, realizing the full weight of the exposure, the irreversibility of the evidence, and the collapse of their efforts to shield him from scrutiny. Outside the chamber, the public reacted with a wave of discussion, analysis, and reflection. Social media feeds exploded with commentary, and news channels replayed Jasmine's closing statements, dissecting the brilliance of her strategy, the clarity of her evidence, and the unshakable moral authority she displayed. In the chamber, a final silence settled over the participants. The confrontation that had gripped the nation, that had tested every nerve and skill, had reached its conclusion. The room retained the charged energy of battle, but the direction had shifted definitively. Jasmine Crockett had stood firm, reasoned impeccably, and emerged victorious, not by intimidation, not by theatrics, but by the power of truth itself. Trump, though still simmering with anger, could not deny the result. Jasmine had achieved the ultimate victory, demonstrating that intellect, preparation, and courage could overcome even the most entrenched power. The hearing had ended, but the legacy of this confrontation and the reverberations of truth exposed would resonate far beyond these walls. As the chamber emptied, the sense of satisfaction and inevitability lingered. History had witnessed a rare moment where justice, intellect, and unwavering integrity prevailed. Jasmine Crockett walked out, calm yet resolute, leaving behind the echoes of a battle that had tested the very fabric of courage, morality, and national accountability. The final verdict was clear. The power of truth had triumphed, and those who wield it with wisdom and courage, like Jasmine Crockett, had etched their names indelibly into the annals of history. As the chamber slowly emptied, a quiet reverence settled over the room, punctuated by the occasional murmur of disbelief or awe. Reporters lingered, cameras still rolling, capturing the lingering energy of a confrontation that had gripped the nation for hours, even days. Every face bore the imprint of what had just transpired: the raw intensity, the unflinching display of intellect, and the undeniable force of justice. Outside the chamber, the ripple effects were immediate and profound. News outlets dissected every document, every testimony, every nuance of Jasmine's strategy. Social media exploded with analysis, commentary, and debate, millions of viewers dissecting the moments they had witnessed live. Hashtags trended, opinion pieces proliferated, and the public engaged in a fervor of discussion that underscored the cultural and political magnitude of the hearing. Jasmine, standing just beyond the chamber doors, felt the weight of the day settle on her shoulders. She allowed herself a moment of calm, the adrenaline slowly ebbing, replaced by a quiet, resolute satisfaction. The respect in the eyes of her colleagues, the nods from witnesses, and even the hesitant acknowledgement from some political opponents spoke volumes. Her victory was not loud or flamboyant. It was methodical, principled, and lasting. Trump, on the other hand, faced a very different reality. The evidence in the chamber's final conclusions had stripped him of the control he had wielded so effortlessly. His aides whispered urgently, attempting damage control, but the narrative had already shifted. Statements issued post-hearing were defensive, reactive, and unable to mask the fractures in his public image. The public had witnessed a leader cornered by truth, and the repercussions extended far beyond the walls of the chamber. Within political circles, the impact was immediate. Allies who had once followed unquestioningly began recalculating their positions. Opponents seized the moment to assert oversight, accountability, and reform. Jasmine's performance had not only exposed deception, but had also demonstrated the power of meticulous preparation, moral courage, and strategic precision. Her example set a new benchmark for public service and accountability, a reminder that intellect and integrity could counter even the most entrenched power. Yet amid the satisfaction and recognition, Jasmine knew the path ahead remained challenging. Justice is rarely absolute, and the echoes of today's confrontation would resonate in unforeseen ways. There would be debates, investigations, and ongoing scrutiny. There would be those who sought to challenge, to twist, or to undermine the narrative she had so carefully constructed. But for now, she allowed herself a measured exhale, knowing that the immediate battle had been won. The chamber, now quiet and still, bore the marks of the conflict. Chairs shifted, documents scattered, pens dropped, but the imprint of courage, strategy, and moral authority lingered in the air. Those who had been present would carry the memory of this confrontation, aware that history had been witnessed firsthand. Jasmine stepped into the corridor, each stride deliberate, composed, yet infused with the gravity of what had been accomplished. Reporters jostled for a word, colleagues offered subdued congratulations, and the public watched intently through the lens of live broadcasts. Her mind, however, was already calculating the broader implications, the systemic changes, the lessons learned, and the responsibilities that came with having exposed such a monumental truth. Trump retreated, visibly agitated, his mind racing through potential strategies, damage control, and future maneuvers. But the immediate consequence was undeniable. The hearing had cemented a turning point. The truth, meticulously documented and powerfully presented, had reshaped public perception, recalibrated political dynamics, and left an indelible mark on national consciousness. And yet, even in this moment of closure, there was a sense of open-endedness. The chamber had delivered its verdict, the public had responded, and accountability had asserted itself. But the story was far from over. Jasmine's victory illuminated paths of reform, vigilance, and continued struggle. There would be future battles, new challenges, and unforeseen adversaries. The principles she had demonstrated, the courage to confront wrongdoing, the rigor of meticulous preparation, and the unwavering adherence to truth, would guide her through whatever came next. As she exited the chamber, head held high, the public gaze followed her. Respect, admiration, and the acknowledgement of courage greeted her from every angle. In the aftermath, the legacy of this confrontation was clear. Truth had not only prevailed, it had inspired. It had reminded a nation that intellect, integrity, and relentless courage could withstand the heaviest tides of power and deception. And for those paying close attention, the subtle implication lingered. The battle for justice, the confrontation between integrity and manipulation, was never truly over. New trials, new revelations, and new heroes would emerge. But on this day, history had watched, and Jasmine Crockett had stood resolute, leaving a mark that would resonate long after the chamber fell silent. But beyond the chambers, the cameras, and the headlines, the true victory lay not in a single hearing, but in the unwavering pursuit of truth. Jasmine Crockett's courage reminded the world that integrity is a force stronger than power, and that one person's steadfast commitment can illuminate the shadows of deception. In life, we are all faced with choices between convenience and conscience, fear and courage, silence and action. Her example calls on each of us to stand boldly for what is right, to speak with clarity, and to live with the quiet, unshakable strength of justice in our hearts. If this battle gripped you, don't just scroll away. Sit with it, talk about it, share it, like, comment, and send it to someone who still believes that truth, courage, and justice deserve a stage. Subscribe to Harrison Stories, where no deception goes unchecked. Hit the bell, because the next confrontation could shake the very foundations of power. It's intense, it's unflinching, and it will make you question what integrity truly means. This story is a fictional dramatization, inspired by real struggles against injustice and the bravery of those who stand for what's right. Any resemblance to actual people or events is coincidental, or a reflection for public thought and critique. Thanks for watching. Justice is not given, it is fought for. This is Harrison Stories.